Hi, my name is Brian Weekly, and I'm the MC for today's event. On behalf of Athletes in Action, Nations of Coaches, and Fellowship of Christian Athletes, we welcome you to the 2021 Coaches Edge. Thanks so much for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules. As you know, coaching during a pandemic, our jobs have become much more difficult. Living well and leading in times of uncertainty is our main focus today. We have a great lineup of speakers for you, so we hope after this hour you feel more refreshed, cared for, and you can take away some things that will benefit you and your team.
Hello, coaches. My name is Eric Nelson. I'm with Athletes in Action. I want to welcome you to the Coach's Edge, or a segment of the Coach's Edge. And here with a co-host is Richie McKay from Liberty University. Thanks for joining us, Coach McKay, as well as two of our esteemed guests today, Lorenzo Romar from Pepperdine and Steve Alford from Nevada, Reno. You know, there's a lot of things that are bubbling up for people in this current environment. We all got challenges, right? Everybody around this nation has challenges. What are some of your challenges?
Yeah, I've been very blessed that I've had 30 years in this business, and really for 30 years, you kind of get in a routine of planning practices, planning, maybe it's a player's retreat or you're doing a lot of team bonding. Could be the team meals at the house. Just that planning and controlling is probably the word. That you kind of, as a head coach, you get to control everything, and when you practice and how long you practice, what you practice. And now in this COVID type of year, you've really lost control of all of that. You show up every day thinking, is a staff member going to test positive? Is a player going to test positive? How that player's handling just the player's mindset. Nothing's normal about the college experience for a lot of us. And I think we're built as human beings to have relationships. And that's really been difficult this year outside of just our basketball bubble. But the thing I guess I've learned is that not being in control has allowed me to have an awful lot of growth spiritually, because as a coach that likes to have control of his own program, you just haven't had that as routinely as you normally do in a given year.
I think their sense of normalcy has evaporated, and why they came to our given institutions or different schools around the country. It's not like what they signed up for. You know, they don't, when they go to the game and after the game, you know, they have their post-game activities or hang out with their friends, or people talk about, man, what a great atmosphere when they go to class and their teacher acknowledges them or recognizes them. Like, they get none of that. They have this routine of sacrifice that they have to test 2-3 times a week. They have to stay in a dedicated area, even for their meals. I just think their experience has been so taxed. And I think for me, I'm challenged by John Maxwell's coach. Leadership can be summed up in one word, and that's influence. Well, how can I influence them to heighten their student-athlete experience in such a way that it represents the mission of our university and where we are as people? And I think that's been the biggest challenge for me, is just trying to find ways that we can keep them on the positive. And our responsibility in that is, if you can never give away what you don't possess, I got to make sure I'm right in order to give that away.
Think about the 30-year-old coaches, or the 30s guys that are watching this, and even the 40s. What are some of those things that you think every leader got to have right now?
I just think you have to be the ultimate servant right now. You have to have an unbelievable servant attitude with your players, your staff, everyone that you're around. What can I do to help? What can I do to get you through this? And do it sincerely. I think that's crucial right now during this time.
Having that confidence that your team can see and your players can see that you are listening to them, you are loving them, and as Lorenzo just said, you are serving them, and it is about them. It's not about, I think as a young coach, sometimes you can get into the trap of, you know, I got to win. Where's the next job? Thinking about the next job. And And that's an entrapment. And especially in a COVID-stricken year, I think of players, and that's where young coaches can really do a good job of growing themselves, that they learn it's not about them. God will open up whatever right door there is to open up in any given time, but the door you're supposed to be in right now is currently where you're at. Now, how are you serving those athletes? How are you serving your young men, your young women that you're dealing with? I think it's one of the most crucial times I've had in my 30 years, because they're just not getting the other things that you normally get in a college setting, going to class. Our guys, I watched tape of our last game against Boise. I think it was on Fox Sports, and they entered it by showing Lake Tahoe, which is 25 minutes from our campus, and it's one of the most beautiful places on our planet. And our guys have been instructed since the 1st of June, don't go to Lake Tahoe. So it's like Lorenzo saying, they're going to go outside and look at Malibu, but don't go to Malibu. It's just, it's just not a normal year for these athletes. And so the more that we can, the more we can be positive, more we can be encouraging, and just be confident of what our program means to them, that we're here for them more than just whether they're learning offense, defense. We got to be here even more so in a year like this of what they're dealing with when they're not with us on the court.
Man, we're living in unprecedented times. We've talked about it over the years with a handful of guys. Unprecedented times of racial and social injustice and issues. What are you learning? What are you learning about yourself or your players, about God through all of this?
Yeah, Lorenzo, man, when we were on a Zoom this summer, you mind sharing with our audience the same thing that you did for me this summer? Because, man, that really illuminated some of the things that I experienced in my own life.
Well, growing up in Compton, California, and being literally 10 minutes from Watts, where the Watts riots took place, and the burning of buildings and all that, we watched it from our house on the staircase. We watched it happening. We didn't need to look at it on the news. We could see it in person. So you knew there was some racial issues out there, but I didn't totally understand it all. And didn't really understand it until one day I was probably 11, 12 years old, and I was playing on a baseball team, a different baseball team that I had been playing on because I wanted to play extra baseball. And I was the only African-American on the baseball team. And I was probably practiced with them for 2 days. And no one treated me any different at the time. But then something happened. I got into an argument with one of the players or something. And the next thing I knew, they were calling me the N-word, and they were all on one side facing me. And I had no idea they even felt that way from day one. So it just totally caught me off guard. And it was unbelievable awakening for me about racism out there.
And you linked it to maybe as a person that had a disability. You unpack that piece was strong.
Well, just growing up African-American at times, you'd go somewhere and people would just treat you a certain way. Certain people would treat you a certain way. And you didn't understand. And I looked at it as people with disability. Sometimes they will walk in a room and people may look the other way. They don't want to make eye contact. They will treat them with respect, but at the same time, they won't really let them get involved in some of the more important areas that they're involved with. And it's because of their disability. And I felt like that growing up as African-American in certain circles, that people treated me as if I had a disability, and that disability was my skin color. And you just wouldn't get the opportunity to do certain things or participate in certain things because of a perceived disability.
I know I can speak for myself. I felt honored that you would share that part of your life with us and even some others in a group. I think you just said it. Gaining understanding helps us really appreciate and love people to a greater degree.
this has been a year where there's been a lot more dialogue, and I think an area of growth for a lot of us, not just in leadership roles, but as players. We've seen that happen on our team of just opening up and really sharing about what you're back, like the stories Coach Romar is talking about. You know, in Little League, I didn't grow up in Newcastle, Indiana with that kind of experience. You know, I just got looked at funny if I struck out. Had nothing to do with my skin color. And, you know, so just those things, I think sharing that with your team, you really allow your team to grow, not just from a basketball standpoint and being closer together as a team, but they really start to understand what life's about. And I think all of us are probably in it for the right reasons of teaching our young men and women those things. And kind of this COVID year has allowed us to get to topics that are much, much more valuable to our young men and women now than they've ever been.
What would you tell yourself 30 years ago about what it takes and what the importance of other people in your life to live this life well?
You know, the first thing that comes to mind, I heard it said once, that family isn't just represented in your blood relatives, but it's anyone that loves you unconditionally. And I think being able to surrender my life to mentors or people that I feel their unconditional love, it's been, in my latter years, it's been a gift from God. So I think I would be real pursuant of having mentors that I really trusted that could help me navigate some tough terrain. I would just say, if I'm talking to that younger self, man, trust in the young man that God created you to be, and believe in yourself and what you're doing, but also surrender your life to people that love you in such a way that they can tell you the truth.
Coach Romar, I'll let you bring it home. I'll just make one comment about that. The question somebody asked me years ago that has stuck with me, that they asked, who can I be 100% with? Can tell them all of myself and know that they'll still love me. I think is so important right now. We watch leaders fall all the time. And if I didn't have a place, or if we don't have a place where we can be 100% with and know that person or that those folks will still love us, because it's really how we experience God, isn't it? Because that's who God is. And we understand grace when we understand it through relationships. That's been real transformative. Most transformative leadership lesson I think I've understood, because I watch lots of leaders fall all the time. I work with a lot of leaders. And it's because they don't have a safe place. They don't have a place to go with other people.
If I could tell my 30-year-old self something, it would be that in most cases, you get hired in a position is because someone has done their research on you and they believe in you and they believe you can do an effective job. If they believe in you, you definitely, you should have that belief in yourself. You are better at what you do than maybe what you think you are, because you've been trained to do this. You've had experience to go out and do what you're supposed to do. But at the same time, you go out, we have clinics, we go to a number of clinics, we have these sessions with other coaches. You look forward to having these sessions with other coaches, and they may bring up something, whether it's how to attack a zone, how to attack a 1-2, 1-1 press, whatever it is, how to attack a matchup zone. And there's some of those things maybe you weren't quite sure about, but it is so awesome to hear some of these guys that have been successful talk about those things, and they provide great insight, and you learn from them, and it makes you a better coach. I mean, it's just an awesome feeling walking away from that. Well, just think spiritually, if you're able to do that with other people that provide insight to you and how you can grow as a Christian, as a husband, as a father, as a leader, things that maybe you didn't feel quite comfortable asking because you didn't want anybody to know you didn't know that well. And for them to share those things and open up, and then, you talk about being loved unconditionally, you realize no one's judging you. We're just in here to help each other. man, it is an unbelievable feeling. And we talk about the Zoom call that we were on throughout the pandemic, and you had that feeling. I would just encourage all you coaches and anyone else that are listening, the same way you do it in coaching to try to get better, do it spiritually. The things that you didn't want to talk about, maybe were embarrassed, find people that you trust, find someone that you trust spiritually, and talk to them about it. Man, it is a great, great feeling.
Well, on behalf of the ministry team and Coach McKay and myself and Coach Alford and Coach Romar, hope you get all that you need to keep going out of the Coach's Edge. Thanks for joining us.
All right, welcome to session number 2 of the Coach's Edge. We're excited here today to introduce a great panel, great starting lineup of coaches from around the country, a bunch of small college guys out there really doing some great things out with their teams, with their communities, really making a huge impact. I'm Ted Quinn, member of the Coaches Ministry team. I'm excited to be able to share with coaches all over the country about different things that are going on. I'd like to introduce our group here. We've got Greg Tonagel, head coach at Indiana Wesleyan. With him as well as Jeff Clark, associate head coach at Indiana Wesleyan. We've got Omar Mance, head coach at Trevecca Nazarene University. Neil Young, head coach at Covenant College. Peter Sabiti, assistant coach at Aquinas College. And special guest, we've got Trent Daly. He's the CEO of the Insurance Management Group in Marion, Indiana. Here today, we want to talk about something special that's begun years back, and it's something called Greater. And I want to lift that up right now. I want to introduce again Coach Greg Tonagel at Indiana Wesleyan. Coach, tell us a little bit about Greater.
You know, as I reflect back on my coaching journey, I look at the first 7 years, and it was built upon a slogan that we call I am third, God first, others second, myself third. But if I'm honest, really those first formative years of coaching were about winning. And it was really the pursuit of winning. But there was a moment where I had to come to a surrender. I had to surrender outcomes as a coach. I had to surrender the world's definition of success. And as that was happening in my own heart and in the hearts of our coaches, it became apparent that this was a universal struggle. This was a battle I think all leaders and specifically coaches were facing. And it wasn't long after that Trent Daly, a local business guy, kind of began to feel the same things, and he began to get involved with our program. And I'm going to pass it along to Trent and ask him to kind of share his involvement and how he really got the ball rolling.
Thanks, Greg. So I was blessed to meet both Greg Tonagel and Jeff Clark several years back, and I saw what they were doing with their program, and it really stood out to me how they were really pouring into these guys. And I thought about the athletics. You know, they weren't just concerned with how many points and getting these guys through and seeing how they could benefit. They were just really focused on these guys being good husbands, good fathers, and they were spiritually pouring into them. So we got together and kind of put our heads together, and that's kind of where Greater started. It was taking something that they had developed over the last 15 years and saying, okay, this is special, and this is something that I think everybody's looking for, and it's really about fulfillment in life. And so I think the passion for me is, as coaches, you guys have the ability to impact so many people. And if we could reach, hundreds of coaches, then it would just change the game of what's most important in life and our focus on the kingdom.
So as we started connecting with more coaches, and we brought this back into college basketball, the vision was pretty simple. We began to ask the question, what if we could combine the best X's and O's in basketball with deep spiritual discipleship and focus? Because we've always had this core conviction that our players' maximum potential lies in their spiritual development. And if we can focus on their spiritual development, we're really going to seek greater purposes for everything that we lead. And it's really been cool to see where Greater's gone since then. I mean, in many ways, Greater's become the counter narrative to the world's way of success. It's really about God embedding his kingdom inside of our leadership efforts, inside of college basketball, if you will. And we've seen it impact junior high coaches all the way to the NBA. Last year, I sat in a hotel room with an NBA coach who basically said to me and asked the question, there's got to be something greater out there. Here I am, I've reached my goal. I'm at the peak of always what I've dreamed of, but there's something more. And to be able to talk to them about greater and be able to initiate some of these conversations, I think really highlights what God is doing through the greater movement right now.
You know, I'm sitting here alongside these two guys who are both being very humble. Greg, in the last 8 years, I believe in all of college basketball, trails only Mark Few in victories. He's won 3 national titles. Trent, in 5 years owning his company, has the value's gone up 10 times. And both these guys who have ultimate worldly success are saying there's something greater in leadership that we can have. And one of the things that we kept seeing was discipleship. So often people look at it as just dissemination of information. It's about creation of material. But as we experienced this, it was more about connection. Like, what happens when spirit-empowered believers connect with each other? Often catalytic, explosive stuff happens. So we were actually on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic. Trent was there, Greg was there. And we just said, why don't we just gather college coaches and let's just talk about what's happening? How do we redefine greatness in college coaching? And we just kind of said, you got to put something on the calendar and make it happen. Well, my mind immediately went back to 2 of my best friends, guys who had influenced me in coaching over a decade. Neil Young and Omar Mance had both been on a mission trip with me to Russia. Deep friends. We connected in ways, and we just said, hey, let's get together in 3 weeks and just talk, even if it's just us 5. And sure enough, knowing Neil, who impacts everybody's around, and Omar, who's one of the most connected people in college basketball, 3 weeks later, we've got over 30 college coaches in a room sharing what God's doing in our program, sharing what the potential is if we really put God first and others second rather than just value our own success. And it was really remarkable what happened over that 24-hour period, and it just carried forward over these past couple of years, and the fruit that's been born is greater than we could have ever dreamed when we first put that date on the calendar.
You know, what was that initial moment like, that first conference as we got together? What was that like for you, and what does it look like here in the last year or so for you?
Well, I'll go first. And again, I'm just humbled to be around these guys. You know, Coach Tonigal and Jeff, they're just a great example of godly leaders and like he said, success. It's really cool because Jeff and Neil and I were able to connect on that missions trip and just really connected with our time together. And we just talked about doing something beyond our impact with our players, but also connecting coaches and learning the things that they have been doing and we had talked about for years. And so when we wanted to bring it together, these guys know me. Jeff said, hey, you think we should do it or we should wait? And I'm full go. I'm a gas to the pedal. I'm like, let's go. Let's do it. We're ready. Let's roll. And I said, give me 24 hours. Let's call as many coaches. And part of it because, you know, my journey, my dad was a longtime coach and he passed away when I was at Vanderbilt. And as a year later, I get the Trevecca job, and Neil and Jeff were 2 of the guys I called right away and said, hey, I know my dad's legacy was to impact through the gospel of Jesus Christ as a coach. And so for me, I wanted to make sure when I got my first head job that's what we did. And Jeff and Neil were 2 guys right away who I needed to learn how to coach first, but also just being able to connect. And so going up to that greater conference led not only to what Neil will talk about a call, but it led to me hopefully connecting with other guys from multiple levels, from, like you said, NBA, D1, all the way down, and it spurred something even greater on my campus. It also talked about some things that we can impact, not only our local communities, but our players and our coaches. And I just think about Ted Quinn, who's on this call as well, who was there with me when my dad passed. And I was there with him when he lost his job as a college coach, that we can really surround ourselves around believers and coaches to actually impact greater than winning. And so I just think about Neil and Jeff, guys I've known for almost 15 years, players together, figuring out if we're going to coach, try to play, and then now looking how God has just used us greatly to impact the kingdom beyond anything we can ask or imagine. So these guys know when they call Omar, there's no way, Ephesians 3:20, I'm going to go all in. God can do above and beyond anything we can ask or imagine. So calling me was the worst thing because we really wanted to do this, us 3 together. We talk a lot. We pray a lot. We're on calls, and we said, man, this should be expanded. And so once this was a full go, I just knew God was going to do something great, and now look what we've done. And Neil, you can share more about how big it's gotten and how much it's impacted. But for me, those initial steps, 2 of my closest friends in college coaching, for us to connect and say, hey, let's take our platform and really impact the kingdom, I think was really, really cool.
Man, I need to start calling you every morning. I don't need to drink as much coffee. I just need to call you and be like, oh my, what you got for me today? But the thing that stands out to me about that first year is, so in our society, like there's a lot of innovation in a lot of different spheres, like especially like the business world, the tech sector. People are always, combining forces, coming up with new and better ways to do things. And as basketball coaches, we go to all these clinics and we're trying to get the newest, the most innovative, the most creative ideas for like how to coach our team. But for me, it was the first time I'd ever been in a room with other basketball coaches. And we're talking about how to innovate when it comes to discipleship. How can we put our creative minds together, and how can we put our experiences together and figure out how to reach our guys at a deeper level? We went to that greater conference, and you leave and you immediately feel a bond with the other coaches that were there, because it was about so much more. It was about, the discipleship of our students and just being with like-minded coaches. So it was pretty special. And we've had two since then, and they've both been very special too in different ways. And, you see, so much fruit produced in and through them, going forward. And it's been really cool.
So Neil, I want to talk a little bit about specifics. Before we do that, though, I want to again introduce Peter Sabiti, way up there in Michigan. Man, it's got to be cold up there today. But Peter, you're probably relatively new to the group in terms of coming in and kind of getting involved in some of the monthly calls and some of those things. But tell us, when did you get involved? How did you hear about it? And what kind of impact has it played on your life here in the last few months or so?
Being connected to the Greater has really changed the way I think of coaching. My first time attending Greater was this past summer. And just going to the conference enhanced what I got into coaching for, because I never really got into coaching for the wins. But at the same time, you want to win, but that only lasts for so long. Like a national championship lasts, for a year, maybe 2 years. But then that goes away. And I think connecting with these guys gives you a deeper sense of belonging, a deeper sense of meaning. And, I think of Greater almost like the gospel. It started with 12 disciples. And I've talked to Jeff and GT about this, but, it started with 12 guys, and now it's, went around the world. And I kind of see the same thing with Greater. But I think this is something that I think every coach really needs.
This is Coach Mike Lightfoot, Nation of Coaches and the Coach's Edge, and we're excited because we have two of the very best young coaches in the country that are going to share a little bit with us today. So, as we kind of dissect and dialogue, this is just a time to chat and get together. My first question, Coach Jordan, goes to how are you dealing? The culture of Butler is so unique, but with the COVID situation, how have you had to adjust this year to how you've coached and the adjustments you had to make because of this terrible virus?
Yeah, thanks, Coach. It's always a pleasure to see you. I think obviously we've had to adjust our lives completely, everybody, and certainly what we're doing as coaches. I think the biggest adjustment has just been time around our guys. As we all know, the relationships, it's, you building up the people, and the people, it's not building up the kingdom, using the kingdom to build the people, but it's the people that help do it. And you need to be able to invest time in the relationships and spend time with guys, to see where their hearts are and get them, get that buy-in that we all look for from each individual and the team as a whole. So I think the adjustment with Zooms and things like this, usually maybe I'd be at a restaurant, one of their favorites, and grabbing a bite to eat with a kid. I haven't been in a restaurant in almost a year. So just trying to navigate in and around, how to invest and have the conversations and listen to our student athletes and our players, and even with our staff, just the lunches, you go to the staff lunch and maybe talk about it, but it's a little more loose than being in the office and sitting around the conference table. So just finding times to get guys out to the house that is safe and finding times to connect with our staff and trying to have meaningful conversations in short bursts that aren't basketball related, whether it's about something going on at home or something positive that we heard about or something to be concerned about or just asking how they're doing. So try to use those times when we can eat together. We're on road trips. There's some places where we're allowed to be in the space together and some where we're not, which is unique. But really, trying to have those moments be quality moments.
Yeah, when you think of, culture, I think everybody just drawn to the Butler way and how that all fits into relationships and spending time together, and you've just been isolated in a way. Coach Drew, have you had to change your culture a bit with this whole mess of the COVID?
Very similar, taking a new job. The first thing you do is you want to go individually meet with all your players. And, at the time when I first, got a new job this year at GCU, COVID was really prevalent and you couldn't really do hardly anything face to face. So the relationship was definitely affected. Since I've been coaching, I've always talked to our team about day by day, game by game. But this year that meaning is totally different to me. And how I've talked to our program about it, because there truly is no guarantee that we'll have that next game or that next weekend. We've been shut down 3 times this year. You just don't know when that's going to happen, and you don't know when the opponent's going to get shut down. So for me, kind of the anxiety of looking at the whole year as a whole has really regressed, and it's a day by day approach, that we literally take every day at practice.
One of the things that we do with the Coaches Edge and part of the Final Four is trying to inform coaches, especially Christian coaches and coaches that are seeking a stronger faith. And I have the question for both of you. I think we all ask this question every day in our own life in one way or the other. But why do you coach? What's the purpose behind the why you do what you do? Bryce, what do you think?
For myself, I was very fortunate to grow up with my dad being a coach. So since I was 3-4 years old, I remember him talking on the phone to recruits, going to high school games with them. So that was just life to me. That wasn't a job. It was just, I thought that was what life was, going and doing all that. So as I, developed a love for basketball and I played and got done playing, I thought there were some coaches in my life that really impacted me. And coaches, I think, can impact people's lives, more so than a lot of other people, even family members, that they may have. And so when I got done playing, there's a great opportunity to coach with my dad and jumping in and seeing kind of how he interacted with the players, with the team, and how he would show me an email from a player he had 10 years ago and how it impacted his life, when he played for my dad. And so those stories kind of build up in me. And, for me, I want our players to be successful in life, and that's the number one mission. And then, hopefully you'll have basketball success. But long story short, as I have a little son, and I look across the country and I'm like, what kind of coach do I want to be so that someone would send their son to play for me, and that I could either continue the path that they're on to lead them hopefully to the kingdom of God and to be internally with all this all together, or can I introduce them to something even greater? And so kind of that mission and that goal that we have within our program is something that's true and it's relevant. And it's something that we care for our players' hearts every day. And, Coach Jordan, there's not a lot of coaches that I would send my son to play for. And he's one that I would send him to play for. And, I think for me, I want to be that type of coach that when people look in our program, they're like, yeah, I could send my son to play for that man, because he's going to develop the whole man and not just the basketball player.
I heard a comment that says our why is when we know our purpose is bigger than us, we know our why. And both these coaches have been great examples of they have a purpose that is bigger than them. Coach Jordan, Bryce said it all right there. He'd like to have Bryson play for you someday. So make sure you make that note. But Coach, what's your why?
Yeah, I know Bryson would be able to make a corner three. That's for sure. Similar. I always tell people, Mike and Bryce is one of the coaches that certainly send. If I got 3 daughters, but if I had a son, send him to play for Coach Drew. But I always say to people, coaching is a calling. It was a different upbringing than Bryce, where I did not necessarily know I wanted to coach. I wanted to be like Bryce Drew one day and go play. But getting back into it when I first did in 2003 and being in the director of ops seat, not really being able to be on the floor, not being able to go on the road and recruit. But what you got to do is, mentor guys, kind of be a big brother, Uncle Finger. Obviously, there was a lot to do to help a program operate. But what I felt called at that time was, you realized the impact that coaches had on their life and the impact you could have, not necessarily on the court, but just as a mentor and as a figure in their lives to help guide them and help them learn and help them see a bigger purpose. And so fast forward to 2010 when I gave my life to Christ and now having an even bigger purpose than just the mentorship piece, but also to help someone maybe find God along the way or encourage them to continue to walk their walk. So there's nothing more powerful than the words, pastor said or coach said, or mom or dad said. I mean, you have those figures and influential people in your life where you remember what they say, and we get to be that for these young people. And so try to take it to heart and give and serve the best you know how.
Billy Graham said a thing that sticks with us as coaches. He said, a coach makes more impact in the lives of people in 1 year than most people do in a lifetime. And so when you think of the coaching and the opportunity and influence coaches have, it's also a responsibility that we have. How do you guys balance? I mean, you're trying to be a parent, Coach Jordan, you got 3 girls that are growing up really fast. And Coach Drew, you got a son that's growing fast. Coach Jordan, how do you balance all of that, marriage and work and being a dad?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's not enough hours in the day, Coach. But yeah, I think obviously God gives us everything we need. I think continuing to remind yourself that if you look in the Psalms and you have everything you need to do it. And so sometimes when you feel stretched thin, just reminding yourself, for me, the mornings are crucial. So trying to wake up before the house gets up, to be able to spend some time just in some prayer, meditation, and gratitude to fuel me and kind of listen and get ready for all of it. The kids to wake up and to get a plan and practice and get to the gym and text the guys we need to text that we need to have a good day and get the staff ready, but to get me ready, first and foremost. And then I think, when you pull into the parking lot, realizing which hat you're putting on and just saying just having some self-talk and a quick word when you're going into the office and when you're pulling into the driveway, having a talk with yourself about which hat you're putting on now, because we can't bring coach home.
That's right.
My wife is not gonna. She's the head coach once we walk in the door. So, but I do think for, like I said, those mornings and the last. I would encourage everybody. I think the last year and a half, 2 years, I've really had a couple of figures and mentors and prayed for a couple of mentors in my life that could reach out to kind of just help spiritually find some balance, and that's been really helpful.
Well, there's no question. You're both of you signed your best recruit, and that's your wife. Coach Drew, how do you do that? How do you balance everything between family and faith and basketball? The Drew family is very connected with a lot of stuff. How do you keep it all balanced?
I wish I had a perfect answer. And like Lavelle, my wife is definitely the head coach, and I hope no coaches listening ever have to take a year off. I was off last year from coaching, and it really opened my eyes to a lot of things maybe that I was doing or wasn't doing, and being at home, and my wife would come home and how I would act when I'd come home to her. And so I really understood a lot more what it was like to be home. So I think now, especially during season, it's really difficult because you spend so many hours at the office. When you get home, not only is it a time thing, but it's also like an energy level. You might need a coffee before you go home just to have some energy with your wife and kids for a little bit. But it really helped me shut off some things. Like when I walk through the door, I need to put my phone away and be present, with my wife and with my son. And do I do that all the time? Like, no, I wish I really did, but I'm conscious of a lot more things for quality time. I'm a night owl, so I think Coach Jordan, you must be a morning guy. I'm a night owl, so they usually go to bed, and then I usually, kind of do my thing after they go to bed. But a big thing I learned, and this again goes back to I think some wisdom I got in my young coaching days. They were like, include your family as much as you can. So, it's really cool. We have chapel here on Monday, and I've kind of gotten a little routine that, Monday mornings, I'll bring my son in, we'll go to chapel, and then, my wife will come get him. And so trying to incorporate my family into our job some, I think really helps not only for me to spend time with them, but also for them to get out of the house, especially during COVID, and get to experience some things, that daddy does at work.
Yeah, we had some little kid that would be riding in the van and things when your dad was coaching. There were two little boys, Scott and Bryce, that were always tagging along, and that caught the model. My favorite story of your dad was before they were playing for getting into the national tournament. I popped in your office. This was like 20 minutes before the game started, about the time when coaches get out on the court, and your dad was reading a book to you and Scott. And I thought, that's what I want to be as a dad. That taught me the balance right there. That's more important. Even the biggest game at that time as a head coach he's ever coached in, and he was reading a book to his sons. And so that hey, last question here, because I really appreciate your time. But one of the things is happening. Are you guys going to do something different with recruiting and having certain guys back? What's your thoughts, Coach Jordan, on how you're going to handle this whole pause in the action and recruiting and the whole thing, and how is it all going to come about? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's there's a constant conversation, I think, probably amongst every staff in the country, just your seniors and the year that everybody's going to be allowed to come back, and transfers and what that's going to look like with immediate eligibility. We assume is coming down the pike, and you still got high school kids and that you're going to be after and all of that. So I think it'll settle, over time here in a couple of years, but I don't know, next year, it depends for us personally. It depends on what some of our seniors are going to do, and we still got a scholarship available, and you're looking at your needs and chemistry and fit is such a big part of it. So, continuing to hard with Zoom recruiting and how much we'll actually be able to be in the living room versus being on a Zoom to get to know people, because that's where you can make or break it. And so, we've been fortunate to get some commitments via Zoom, but getting out to see kids play, we haven't been able to do to truly evaluate and watch behavior and the things that we look for. So we're looking forward to getting back in the gym and seeing some games at some point. Hopefully that's here soon. But I think each staff will find its balance, and as long as you continue for us to keep it about fit for the culture, right? We should be okay.
That's really a great point, that I think as coaches are watching this, that you have to find a fit for your culture. And there's going to be a lot of time where you're going to look back on this and try to sort through it. But it's almost a time of uncertainty still. But I think coaches of today are used to uncertainty because they've been in that uncertain bubble for now almost a year. So, Coach Drew, what's your thoughts on how you're going to continue with current seniors, adding people, transfers, D1, all that stuff?
Obviously we have a plan, going forward, but like we talked earlier, everything is so day to day now. We have 5 seniors, all 5 could come back. All 5 could be like, I'm done with college. I want to go on with my life. And for us, there's so much uncertainty. There's really no model for this. Like we can't call, a Hall of Fame coach somewhere, or someone who's won 1,000 games and say, hey, how'd you handle this situation? Because nobody knows what's going to happen with the seniors coming back. Obviously with the transfer rule, for us, it's kind of, we're going in eyes wide open, and it'll kind of be just the feel thing, as things pop up here and there, because we all have our plans, but obviously plans get diverted very quickly, and especially in recruiting.
Yes. So I really appreciate your thoughts, because it still is up in the air, and probably still will continue as we actually get into the springtime and hopefully get things sorted out. I think that's kind of the thing that all the coaches are out there waiting for. Will this finally end and I can get back to doing what I'm comfortable doing?
Thank you to each of the speakers and all the coaches on this screen. Even though we wish we could be with you in person, we are still very grateful we have this Zoom platform, which has enabled all this to happen today. I know I was challenged and encouraged today as a coach and as a person, so our hope is that you were as well. This concludes our time together. If you're interested in upcoming events, please go to the NABC Ministry Events website shown on the screen to discover all that's available for you and your players. Thank you, and we look forward to serving you again in the future.